The Battle of Gettysburg, a nation's turning point. The morning of July 1st, 1863, dawned warm and hazy over the quiet farmlands of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The town's 2,400 residents were just beginning their day, shopkeepers opening their stores, farmers tending to their fields, and children walking to school, unaware that within hours their streets would be filled with smoke, blood, and the roar of cannon fire. The American Civil War had raged for over 2 years by then. The Confederate Army of Northern Virginia, under General Robert E. Lee, was riding high after victories at Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville. Lee believed that another triumph, this time on Union soil, might break the North's will to fight. So, he led his army across the Potomac River into Pennsylvania, aiming to threaten cities like Philadelphia, Baltimore, and even Washington, D.C. Facing him was the Union Army of the Potomac, newly commanded by Major General George G. Meade, who had taken charge just 3 days earlier. Meade's army shadowed Lee's movements, seeking to block the Confederates' advance. Neither general planned to fight at Gettysburg, yet fate, as it often does, had other intentions. Day 1. The clash begins. Early that morning, Confederate troops under General A.P. Hill marched toward Gettysburg, hoping to seize much-needed supplies, especially shoes, rumored to be in town. As they approached, they ran into Union cavalry commanded by General John Buford. Buford, a seasoned soldier with a sharp eye for terrain, immediately saw the high ridges west of town, McPherson's Ridge, Cemetery Hill, and Culp's Hill, as the key to the battlefield. He told his officers, "We'll hold here. The devil's to pay if we lose these heights." With barely 2,700 cavalrymen, Buford dismounted his troops and formed a thin defensive line. Soon, the first shots of the Battle of Gettysburg cracked across the fields. By mid-morning, Union infantry under General John Reynolds arrived to reinforce Buford. Reynolds, one of the Union's best commanders, galloped forward to rally his men, only to be struck down by a Confederate bullet. He fell dead beside the Lutheran seminary, his death a heavy blow to the Union. Despite fierce resistance, Confederate forces under Generals Hill and Ewell pressed the Federals back through the town. Civilians watched in terror as blue-coated soldiers fled through the streets, pursued by the gray ranks of the South. By evening, the Union Army had fallen back to the high ground south of town, Cemetery Hill, a strong defensive position that would prove crucial in the days ahead. As darkness fell, the weary soldiers of both sides lay among the dead and wounded. The first day had cost thousands of lives, and the battle was far from over. Day 2. The bloody struggle for the hills. July 2nd brought a blistering sun and a grim determination on both sides. Lee believed he had the Union forces pinned and sought to destroy them. He ordered attacks on both Union flanks, the left near Little Round Top and the right near Culp's Hill. The Union Army had dug in along a long fishhook-shaped line, from Culp's Hill on the right, curving around Cemetery Hill, down Cemetery Ridge, and ending at Little Round Top on the left. It was a strong defensive formation, but only if every part held. On the Union left, General Daniel Sickles, unhappy with his assigned position, advanced his corps without orders to a line near a peach orchard. This mistake left a dangerous gap in the Union defenses. Lee seized the opportunity. He ordered General Longstreet, his most trusted commander, to attack. Around 4 p.m., Longstreet's division stormed forward into the wheat field, the peach orchard, and the Devil's Den. The fighting was savage, hand to hand, with muskets firing point blank and bayonets flashing in the afternoon sun. At Little Round Top, the key to the Union line, Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain of the 20th Maine found himself facing repeated assaults from Alabama regiments. When his man ran low on ammunition, Chamberlain, a former college professor, made a desperate decision. He ordered a bayonet charge down the slope. He shouted, "Fix bayonets!" His men swept forward with a roar, surprising the exhausted Confederates and driving them back. Chamberlain's courage saved the Union left, and possibly the entire army. On the right flank, the Confederates attacked Culp's Hill and East Cemetery Hill, but the Union troops held firm. By nightfall, the ground was soaked with blood. The Union line bent, but it did not break. Day 3, Pickett's Charge. The third day, July 3rd, 1863, dawned under a heavy stillness. Both armies had suffered terrible losses, over 20,000 casualties already. Yet, Lee was determined to strike one more blow. He believed the Union center at Cemetery Ridge was weak after 2 days of fighting on the flanks. He decided to attack straight through the middle. It was a bold and desperate gamble. Around 1 p.m., 150 Confederate cannons opened fire in one of the largest artillery bombardments ever seen in North America. The thunder rolled across the hills for nearly 2 hours. Civilians miles away heard the booming like distant thunder. Union guns responded fiercely. The air was thick with smoke, the earth trembling beneath the continuous explosions. Then, as the cannon fire faded, 12,500 Confederate soldiers emerged from the woods. Pickett's charge had begun. They marched shoulder to shoulder across open fields nearly a mile wide, toward a stone wall known as the Angle. Union artillery tore holes in their ranks, but still they came, proud, steady, fearless. As they neared the wall, Union infantry unleashed devastating volleys. The Confederate line faltered, but pressed on. For a brief moment, a handful of Southern soldiers breached the Union position. A fierce struggle erupted, bayonets, muskets, and fists. Then, it was over. The Confederates were repulsed. Pickett's division was shattered. More than half his men were dead or wounded. Lee rode out to meet the survivors. He told them quietly, "It's all my fault. The responsibility is mine." Across the field, Meade stood among his officers, grim and exhausted. He had won, but at a terrible cost. The aftermath. When the guns finally fell silent, Gettysburg was a landscape of death. Over 50,000 men were killed, wounded, or missing, the largest number of casualties in any battle of the American Civil War. The fields were strewn with broken bodies, shattered cannons, and the cries of the dying. Civilians of Gettysburg, shocked and heartbroken, began the grim task of caring for the wounded and burying the dead. Churches became hospitals and homes filled with suffering soldiers from both sides. The smell of blood and gunpowder lingered for weeks. Lee's army retreated back to Virginia, never again to invade the North. The Union had held firm. Gettysburg became known as the turning point of the war, the moment when the tide began to shift toward Union victory. The Gettysburg Address. 4 months later, on November 19, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln came to dedicate a cemetery for the fallen soldiers. The nation was still grieving. The war still raged. Lincoln's speech was brief, just 272 words, but it captured the soul of the battle and the meaning of the struggle. We cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground, he said. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. That this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. His words transformed Gettysburg from a place of tragedy to a symbol of hope, a reminder that the sacrifices made there were not in vain. A soldier's memory. In the years that followed, survivors often returned to Gettysburg. Among them was Private Thomas Wheeler, who had fought with the Union's